Hi, welcome back to my channel. I thought I'd do a video on something that kind of just came across. I just came across on a video on YouTube, and it was actually based around narcissism, the video itself. And I've got this massive thing of popcorn. I might just have a bit of that. So it was based around narcissism itself, but I came across this idea where he brought up like criminal narcissists, and I don't know who in life, if you're of the young persuasion, you may not have come across someone that is what you'd call of the criminal persuasion. I'm not gonna lie, in school I've never had an issue really with people doing like drugs. Honestly, it's never been something I've been into, but I've been around people that do drugs. I'm not what you'd call a snitch in that area. I'm not here to, you know, put someone in prison. But it was interesting to me how he described the entitlement of law breaking in criminals and people of the narcissistic persuasion. Do you like my new glasses, by the way? They're fake, but they make me look intelligent. So, and I'll also bring into this psychopaths in that they might put up this fake front of I'm really good for the environment. Look at me. I think it's one thing having self-esteem and looking after your you know, I'm kind of cold. I should probably put a jumper on. Looking after your reputation, looking after, you know, having self-esteem, you know, putting forward what you do in life. That kind of comes under communal narcissists, I think, where they like to sort of like focus on their good attributes. But I do think apparently it's a trait of psychopathy if you are, look at me, sweater vest and glasses, that's a little bit over the top, isn't it? When people are sort of like have this front of like, look, I'm so good for like animal advocates and stuff, but then I'm like, people are actually really passionate about animals, so you got to take that into account as well. Even like me, like I'm one of those people where you could put me in that category of, you know, I don't really, like, I've got my own business, some of it's environmentally friendly, it's not something I massively like rely on, but you could then in theory put me into that category because I talk about issues I'm interested in on this, but then I have passion towards those topics, so you got to put that in. But this guy was describing how people who have psychopathic traits would kind of use certain moral standpoints as a front to kind of disguise their need to feel you know, to be psychopathic in whatever way that is. I can't really remember what entails psychopath at this point. So just there we go, that's one thing. But also brought out the entitlement of criminals and how certain people feel entitled to break laws, how sometimes they have this air of superiority and almost omnipotentness, because the idea of people that do apparently work on a quite low vibration of sort of this like obviously deception level. Some people, for example, people that like might steal things, like muggers and thieves and rapists, things like that, they probably work on a not just I'm not saying like, I'm not trying to judge, but I'm saying they can work on a level of try and catch them out before they catch you kind of thing. In terms of, I heard when someone's trying to mug, someone got interviewed that was a mugger, and he said people are too healthy, they're too like literal sometimes, where if you ask someone the time, it's those 2 seconds between someone getting to your mental level. You know how when you interact with someone you can kind of sense their vibration? It's those 2 seconds it takes to sense someone's vibration when you're interacting with someone that it takes to bash someone over the head and steal their stuff. Like, obviously that's right, quite a violent mugging, but do you know what I mean? It's that sort of mindset. But sometimes if you ever come across someone who's kind of might have that sort of like criminal mentality, maybe they're, you know, related to drugs, maybe they're, you know, they've committed lots of crimes, they like to be outside the law, they like to be very entitled, they like to, you know, in whatever way they can feel superior and dominant over other people for whatever reason. You know, you can definitely put narcissism into that. And also I've noticed people that I've seen that have been criminal are also kind of boring on my level, because I don't know, I don't feel that like my level of intellect is kind of quite honestly probably socialised by school. I'm quite interested in topics that I can talk about, expand on, come to a resolution about, potentially do something towards, expand other people's minds. But I think particularly it was just really interesting to me when they talked about people of the criminal persuasion. I'm talking sort of like middle-aged men potentially that, you know, as I say, get into issues at times. I've definitely been through the mental health system, and I know for a fact that definitely there can be huge factors in life that influence, obviously, the way you go through life. People have really difficult upbringings. You know, they obviously, sometimes if you have a criminal life, you can have had a really hard upbringing, might have had abusive parents, you might have had drugs and alcohol, and or both, or violence, or all of the above in the household, and you know, that could be partially a coping strategy. But I'm talking about people who do not wish to conform at all to society, but past the point of sociopathy, because I think the level of sociopathy is that you don't care to conform to society's rules, hence sociopathy. I think I have levels of that, not gonna lie, but it's kind of controlled in society. But these are people where that kind of is not controlled in society. Generally, I'm talking about to the point where there is a level of mischieviousm, that kind of, I hope I'm saying that right, like mischieviousm, like being mischievous, that it's enjoyment in breaking the law. And often what comes with that, apparently it's not a genuine, obviously the thing about narcissism is that the level of inadequacy then brings about this sort of overcompensation for the inadequacy they feel in order to like try and level it out, because the psyche is very clever at evening out things within the psyche that feel inadequate to kind of keep you at a level mental place, if you like. Again, I'm just here to discuss this, not to judge, but I've definitely had it where I felt someone has, in order to gain this level of awe, superiority, I think this also comes with like people that try and like sort of like, you know, persuade women to have like, you know, relationships with them that maybe are player types, if you like. I think to have this level of awe and superiority and leverage over someone, they'll kind of walk around with this sort of like omnipotent, like everyone loves me, like no one can overcome my level of strength and all that stuff. I think from a biological level, because I'm aware we all understand things on different levels, but I found this quite interesting when this guy was talking about this. From a biological level, I definitely think that your level of hormones, your the way you're built, like the inner mechanisms of your physiology, in terms of if you're massively built, you know, there's people that are just quite big in general, they've probably got high levels of testosterone, blah blah blah, they're probably quite primal minded, if you like, and I think we can all get in touch with our lizard brain. So people that are very in touch with their lizard brain and potentially good looking, potentially, you know, people, apparently he described them as people with high IQs, but that can use those traits to basically, I wouldn't use the word trick the system, because I think the system is a very complex thing with a lot of issues. So I don't think it's wrong to necessarily trick the system, but I would say people won't go out the way to be entitled enough to break the law for things that maybe aren't that helpful. I'm not trying to judge. I understand that people have different life paths. To be honest, a lot of people medicate with things like weed because they have had such a stressful upbringing, and it can have medical benefits in order to heal the body and mind. But it was just the way he described it in narcissism and this level of this aura thing that, and I'm definitely a believer of energy as well, that you carry a certain energy and aura around with you. But it's interesting for me to connect the dots between narcissism, criminality, and just mischieviousm, and sort of trying to just understand from a constructive level in my own mind how these people might operate. Just, I would love to actually, I can't be bothered to study criminology or anything, but if anyone studied criminology or knows anything about it, please comment below, because I'm actually fascinated. Can't really bother to even research it on Google, but I think I've kind of somewhat done it before. It's hard to find lots of research about it, but I mean, there's loads on the internet about it, but I'd like it to be discussed simply, things like something like narcissism, where it's like a simple, but everyone's so complex, it's hard to differentiate what. Anyway, I haven't really learned much about criminology, but it was interesting to me because they talk about the dark triad, as I've kind of mentioned all the errors of the dark triad. But it's interesting from a narcissistic place that I don't think so much anymore, because I think we just live in a much more open society with things like the internet. We're very much more aware of people, and I think things like narcissism, I saw on a Dr. Phil episode, he mentioned that he thinks that narcissism is just more freely, people talk about we live in a more narcissistic world. He brought up the point that we could just be more aware of it now because of things like the internet, and I think that's true. I'm definitely of the mindset that people are just more narcissistic now, because I definitely remember being in school. I don't think there's any more narcissists than there were back when I was at school. I just think people were much more covert about it, and they were much more nasty and sort of under the radar, and they used to just be more difficult and come out the woodwork when you weren't expecting. I'd rather them be open about it and you can sense them from a mile away than them sneak up on you in the back of the class and, you know, start being really nasty to someone, you know. Like, I definitely think that was a thing when I was at school. Well, it wasn't as fun. I'd rather not not be in that space anymore. I think it's better now. But anyway, I definitely think people are more aware of it now. I definitely, though, to put a bit of a balance on this, from people that I've been around that might have that level of mindset, I definitely think that there are things to learn from different people in life. Like, I'm not saying like go and find a criminal and just like spend time with them and just put yourself in a potentially dangerous situation. But I think I've just met people in my recent past that, or a particular person that I think had some experience around this and kind of was of that persuasion. There was a lot of issues, but I learned a lot of life lessons and a lot of things about how I think there's a level of what's the word, power that comes with like, I think there's a level of societal expected, I think there's a level of justness in society and what's right and what's wrong from a general level. Obviously I know everyone's got their own perspective, but some people will go out their way to be, you know, mischievous, and it's not just on a moral standpoint, from anyone's moral standpoint. So that's kind of given me that safety and security and grounding and like boundary of like understanding that it's okay to be morally just in a situation, and I'm not just like living a random lifestyle that doesn't really mean anything. It's a moral standpoint that I stand by, and that's okay. But I do think there can be stuff to learn from people of that persuasion, in that a lot of people are sheep-like, if you ask me. A lot of people can find it easy to follow the crowd and sort of conform to things because of sort of obedience, blind obedience in things like school. They haven't got much courage to sort of break away from the status quo or sort of do anything that's kind of out the way. I would definitely say like there's people in all walks of life, people that I wouldn't have had contact with in school that, you know, I think like, I'm not saying like people don't like do drugs throughout school, I'm not saying people aren't, you know, nasty in school, I'm not saying that people, I definitely think people develop at different stages in life as well. I think like there's people in all walks of life that do things that are mischievous, but I think when it comes to, I definitely, this person I was sort of hanging around with, I feel like they had this level of, I don't know, I just think the thing that I learnt from them, or I learnt a lot about myself, probably not through them, probably through growing from myself, but I just think it taught me in some ways that you don't have to, and this, as I say, this is probably learning through myself rather than them, you don't have to agree with everyone. And I'm not going to thank them for teaching me that, because I think I learned it myself. And It's just a very interesting topic to me, to look into, because I don't really have that sort of criminal mindset. I can kind of somewhat understand people not wanting to like not be a teacher's pet, but at the same time, when it comes to things like theft, like I have that filter. It's not really something I'm strongly inclined to do. And it's interesting to me people that are strongly inclined to do that. But it talks about, even in like the Bible and stuff, there's always been thieves, there's always been, you know, robbers, there's always been rapists. And I definitely think other personality disorders, while we're on this topic, can probably come into things like that. For example, if you've got borderline traits, I'm sure that you might be prone, there's a possibility that people that rape or have raped in the past could have had potential borderline traits, and they don't feel that they could get, they feel rejected by their opposite sex, therefore would potentially be a predator in rape experience, that when they felt they couldn't, you know, get that from someone else. Just to put that out there, I would think that would be a valid, potentially controversial, but valid opinion. Yeah, obviously it's probably quite common that thieves and robbers and stuff might be psychopathic or sociopathic, highly possible. Obviously these things can be generational, and who am I to say what's right or wrong in terms of, obviously from my standpoint and my, you know, standpoint, it would be wrong from my perspective, but I'm just a human being just like they are. I'm not more important than them in any way. I'm not more valuable than them in any way. We're all God's children. God makes the world in a level that we don't understand. And he made robbers, and he made thieves, and he made rapists. And you can't have the good without the bad. And I suppose that comes with situations in life and situations that come about by different people as well. So I feel like this was quite interesting to make, but it's definitely given me a bit of a breath of fresh air. And also I think you've got this sense of, you're afraid of what you don't understand, and you might be also attracted to what you don't understand, in terms of you might just attract people into your life that might have traits of this thing, because you need to learn about it and sort of like evolve past it, if that makes sense. And yeah, I think once you understand something, they say when you see something it disappears, but when you're scared of something, if you don't understand something, you're scared of it. And I think having more of an understanding of that grandiosity sort of air of like, I'm the greatest kind of mentality, where, as I know from a narcissistic sense, that comes from a very inadequate place within themselves, and also an untruthful place. Knowing people that know them, I know that's not really how they're perceived by other people. It would be how they perceive themselves. And in a narcissistic sense, they do talk about narcissists living in psych fantasy, but interesting to me how this has all played out. But life lessons nonetheless. So yeah, thanks for listening, and speak to you soon. Bye.